I'm a doctor. Stay calm. Gasping. My chest hurts. I can't breathe. It's a heart attack. Stay still. Hold on. The ambulance is coming. Thank you. You saved my life. I'm a doctor. Stay calm. My chest hurts. I can't breathe. Heart attack. I'll save you. Hold on. Help is on the way. Thank you. You're saving my life. I'm a doctor. Stay calm. The domestic worker saves a tycoon amidst a heart attack. A maid like you isn't even fit to clean my shoes, much less to look me in the eye. The tycoon spat, not imagining that minutes later, that very woman would bring him back to life. The 38th floor of the Sterling Tower, high above Manhattan's financial district, smelled of artisan coffee and old money. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view, from which New York City seemed like a crystal tapestry laid at the feet of one man, Maxwell Sterling. Aurora Vance lowered her gaze and continued polishing the marble floor. She was 28, wore an immaculate blue uniform with a white apron, and her hands trembled not from fear, but from suppressed rage. She knew how to stay silent. She had learned silence the hard way. "Did you hear me, girl?" Maxwell insisted, adjusting his tie in front of the window. "When I enter a room, the staff disappears. I don't want to see you. I don't want to smell you. I don't even want to know you exist." "Yes, sir," she replied with a voice so serene it seemed to disarm him for an instant. Beside him, lounging in the back of an Italian leather armchair, Cassandra Hayes let out a delicate laugh, the kind that cuts deeper than a knife. She wore white with pearls at her neck and perfectly red lips. Maxwell's fiancée, or so the magazines and contracts said. "Poor thing," Cassandra murmured, observing Aurora as one might observe a stain on an expensive rug. "Look at her hands, Max. Those hands were born to mop. Some people are born to command, and some are born to obey. It's nature." Aurora didn't look up, but inside, something was breaking and mending at the same time. "If you only knew," she thought, "if you only knew where I came from, you wouldn't dare speak to me like that." Because just 3 years ago, those same hands now polishing a floor had opened chests in emergency operating rooms. They had held hearts that stopped beating and forced them back to life. Aurora Vance was no mere maid. She was, or had been, one of the most brilliant cardiologists to walk the halls of Metropolitan General Hospital until everything was taken from her. "Cassandra, leave her," Maxwell said. "Not out of compassion, but out of boredom. It's not worth wasting words on the staff." He sat behind his mahogany desk, a piece of furniture so grand it resembled an altar. On it lay a silver laptop, a gold pen, and a cup of coffee a secretary had brought him minutes earlier. Maxwell took a long sip and reviewed some documents, his brow furrowed. Cassandra approached from behind and massaged his shoulders with soft hands. "Don't get agitated, my love. Your heart isn't up for scares anymore. Did you take your pills today?" "I took them," he grunted. "Doctor Thorne says I'm better than ever." "Dr. Thorne is always right," Cassandra purred, and in her eyes, something glinted that Aurora, glancing sideways, managed to notice. Something cold, something that didn't fit a woman in love. Aurora gathered her bucket and prepared to leave, but then it happened. Maxwell let out a strange groan. The coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered against the desk, splattering the documents. He clutched his chest. His other hand gripped the edge of the desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Max!" Cassandra took a step back. Not forward, back. "Max, what's wrong?" I can't breathe," he gasped. His face had turned the color of ash. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His eyes, once so haughty, widened, filled with a terror that money couldn't buy or dispel. He slumped from his chair and fell to the marble floor. Aurora had just polished. "Someone call an ambulance!" Cassandra screamed, but she didn't move. She remained frozen, a hand on her pearls, watching her fiancé writhe on the floor. And in that eternal second, Aurora understood something that chilled her to the bone. Cassandra wasn't calling for help. She was waiting. But Aurora didn't wait. She dropped the bucket. Dirty water spilled across the marble as she crossed the office in 3 strides and knelt beside the man who had humiliated her minutes earlier. "Mr. Sterling, look at me," she said, and her voice changed completely. It was no longer the submissive voice of the maid. It was firm, clear, commanding. "Look me in the eyes. You're going to be okay. I'm here." "What? What are you doing?" Cassandra stammered. "Don't touch him. You're a servant. You don't know anything." Aurora didn't even hear her. Her fingers sought Maxwell's neck, found the carotid, measured the pulse. Thready, irregular, dangerously weak. She tugged his tie loose, unbuttoned the top buttons of his shirt. "Does he have a cardiac history?" she asked, not looking at anyone in particular. I don't." Cassandra stammered. Answer me. Does he take medication? Which ones? Heart pills. Dr. Thorne prescribes them. Aurora frowned. Something wasn't right. The symptoms were those of a heart attack, yes, but there was something more. The skin color, the pupil dilation, that tremor. She filed it away for later. Now, only one thing mattered, keeping him alive. Sir, I'm going to help you. I need you to focus on my voice. Breathe with me. Slowly. Maxwell looked at her through the pain, through the fear. His eyes fixed on the face of the woman he had scorned and saw something he didn't expect. Certainty. No, don't leave me, he whispered, clutching her wrist with the little strength he had left. I won't leave you, Aurora responded. I'm a doctor. Stay calm. The words fell over the office like a bomb. Cassandra recoiled another step, as pale as her dress. A doctor? She repeated as if the word were an insult. That's impossible. She's a domestic worker. But Aurora was no longer there to explain. She leaned her head over Maxwell's chest. She listened, counted. His pulse was slipping through her fingers like water. And then she felt the exact moment when the man's heart stopped beneath her hand. He's in cardiac arrest, she said aloud, and years of training took control of her body. Call 911 now and bring the first aid kit from reception, the one with the defibrillator. A secretary who had peered through the door ran off. Cassandra remained rooted to the spot. Aurora interlocked her hands over Maxwell's sternum and began compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted in a low voice, with perfect rhythm, pushing down on the tycoon's chest with a strength her slender body didn't seem to possess. Sweat trickled down her forehead. A lock of hair escaped her bun. Come on, Sterling, she murmured between compressions. You're not going on my watch. You're too stubborn to die. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. She tilted his head back, pinched his nose, and breathed air into him. The man's chest rose and fell. She returned to compressions. The office had filled with people, secretaries, assistants, 2 security guards. All watched, paralyzed, as the maid the boss had mistreated fought tooth and nail to keep him alive. Bring me that defibrillator, fast, Aurora shouted. A guard ran in with a red box. Aurora tore it open with a slap, pulled out the device, ripped open Maxwell's shirt, and affixed the pads to his chest with a precision that left everyone speechless. Stand back. Nobody touch him, she ordered. The device analyzed. A robotic voice indicated shock advised. Clear. Maxwell's body arched with the shock. Aurora immediately returned to compressions, without losing a second. Counting, pressing, silently pleading. Cassandra, in a corner, pulled out her phone and, instead of filming her fiancé, dialed a number and whispered something no one heard. Aurora charged a second shock. The device spoke again, the body arched again, and then, beneath her fingers, she felt it. A heartbeat, weak, irregular, but a beat. And another, and another. Maxwell coughed. His eyes fluttered open. He took a hoarse, desperate gulp of air, like a man returning from the bottom of the sea. The entire office held its breath. He's alive, a secretary murmured, covering her mouth with her hands. Aurora fell back, sitting on her heels, gasping, her bangs plastered to her forehead with sweat. Her hands trembled, but there was no relief in her eyes. There was still a question. Maxwell slowly turned his face towards her. He looked at her. He truly looked at the woman in the blue uniform, the maid who wasn't even fit to clean his shoes, and from his parched lips came a thread of a voice. You saved me. I told you I wouldn't leave you, Aurora replied. In the distance, ambulance sirens could be heard approaching on the avenue. Paramedics would arrive in minutes, but on that 38th floor, something had already changed forever. Maxwell couldn't take his eyes off her, and Cassandra, from her corner, put away her phone and looked at Aurora with a new expression. It was no longer contempt, it was fear, because she had just realized that this insignificant maid had not only saved Maxwell Sterling, she had ruined a plan that had been weaving in the shadows for months. And as the paramedics burst into the office with their stretcher and equipment, Cassandra Hayes approached Aurora from behind and whispered in her ear with a blood-chilling smile. I don't know who you really are, girl, but I swear I'm going to find out. And the day I do, you're going to wish you'd never entered this tower. Aurora slowly stood up, brushed off her stained uniform, and looked her in the eyes without blinking. Go ahead, madam, she replied in a low voice. Find out. I also have things to find out in this tower. And by the way she said it, Cassandra knew that this war had just begun. The city's most expensive private hospital had rooms that looked like hotel suites. Maxwell Sterling lay in a bed with white sheets, connected to a monitor that traced his heart in green lines. Alive, stable, thanks to a woman who, according to all records, was nothing more than cleaning staff. Aurora waited in the hallway, still in her stained uniform. She hadn't wanted to go home. Part of her, the medical part, the one that never completely turned off, needed to make sure the man survived the night. The other part, the darker one, the one that had been hidden under the white apron for 3 years, had her own reasons for staying in that tower and in that hospital. The elevator doors opened. Cassandra Hayes emerged like a queen entering her court. Heels clacked against the floor, sunglasses, even indoors, and beside her, a tall man with silver hair and an immaculate white lab coat. Aurora gasped. She knew that face. She knew it too well. She had seen it in her nightmares for 1,000 nights. Dr. Elias Thorne, the same man who 3 years ago had signed the report that destroyed her career. The same one who had testified before the medical committee that Dr. Aurora Vance was negligent, reckless, and a danger to patients. The same one who had looked her in the eyes as they revoked her medical license and told her in an unctuous tone that he was very sorry, but facts were facts, and the facts that time had been a perfectly woven lie. Aurora abruptly lowered her face and turned to the hallway window, pretending to look at the city. Her heart pounded so hard she thought Maxwell's own monitor would register it from the room. "Doctor, I'm so glad you arrived," Cassandra said, taking off her sunglasses. "It's been a horrible night. Max almost didn't make it." "I know, dear. I came as soon as you called," Thorne replied, with that smooth voice Aurora remembered too well. "How is he now?" "Stable, but—" Cassandra lowered her voice and glanced sideways at Aurora, who was still with her back turned. "There's something you need to know. The one who saved him was one of the maids, and she claims to be a doctor." Thorne stopped short. "A doctor?" "That's what she said. I'm a doctor. Stay calm." And then she performed, I don't know, maneuvers. She connected him to a defibrillator. She revived him in front of everyone, as if she'd done it 1,000 times. The doctor frowned. His cold, calculating eyes swept the hallway until they settled on the back of the woman in the blue uniform. "What's her name?" he asked. "I don't know for sure. On the papers, it says Aurora Vela or something. She just started a few weeks ago. Aurora Vela, the false name Aurora, had used to get a job in the tower. A name similar enough to hers to respond to, without mistake, distinct enough not to raise suspicion. Until now." Thorne walked slowly towards her. Each step resonated like a sentence. "Miss," he said behind her, "excuse me, I understand you attended to Mr. Sterling." Aurora took a deep breath. She couldn't run. Running was admitting she had something to hide. She turned slowly, her face composed, chin held high, and looked him directly in the eyes. And she saw the exact instant Dr. Elias Thorne recognized her. It was a fraction of a second, a pupil that dilated, a jaw muscle that tensed, the color draining from his perfectly shaved face. To anyone else, it would have gone unnoticed. But Aurora had been waiting 3 years for this moment, and savored it like water in the desert. "Yes, doctor," she replied calmly. "I performed CPR and used the automated external defibrillator. He was in cardiac arrest for almost 2 minutes. I managed to reverse it." Thorne swallowed. He regained his composure with visible effort. "I see. And where did you learn these techniques?" "In the same places you learned them, doctor," Aurora said, without blinking. The silence that followed was so dense it could be cut. Cassandra looked from one to the other, sensing that something was happening that she was missing. "Do you two know each other?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "No," Thorne replied too quickly. "No, of course not. How would I know the cleaning staff?" He forced a smile. "I'm simply surprised to find such talent in unexpected places." "Talent appears where you least expect it, doctor," Aurora responded, "just like lies." Thorne pressed his lips together. For a moment, they held each other's gaze. Two old enemies recognizing each other on a battlefield neither had chosen. At that moment, the room door opened, and a nurse poked her head out. "Mr. Sterling is awake. He's asking for the young lady who saved him." Cassandra automatically stepped forward. "For me, you mean? I'm his fiancée." "No, madam," the nurse said uncomfortably. "He specifically asked for the one in the blue uniform." Cassandra's face fell. Aurora, without waiting for anyone's permission, entered the room. Maxwell was paler than usual, but his eyes had regained some of their sparkle. When he saw her enter, something in his expression softened in a way he himself wouldn't have known how to explain. "It's you," he murmured. "I thought I dreamed it." "It wasn't a dream, Mr. Sterling," Aurora said, approaching the foot of the bed. "Your heart stopped. We brought you back. We brought you, didn't we?" He corrected in a faint voice. You brought me back." He paused for a long time, observing her as if seeing her for the first time. "This morning I told you you weren't even fit to clean my shoes. I remember perfectly, sir." Maxwell closed his eyes for an instant. When he opened them, there was something akin to shame in them, an emotion so foreign to his face that it seemed not to fit. "Why did you save me after how I treated you?" Aurora was silent for a few seconds. The true answer was complicated. The true answer had to do with oaths, with operating rooms, with a dead sister, and with a revenge that had been slowly simmering for years. But she chose the simple answer. "Because I'm a doctor," she said, "and a doctor doesn't choose whom to save based on how they're treated. A doctor saves." Maxwell observed her for a long time. A real doctor? It wasn't just a figure of speech. A real doctor, a cardiologist to be exact. And what is a cardiologist doing cleaning my floors? The question hung in the air. Aurora felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She couldn't tell the truth. Not yet. Not with Dr. Thorne just a few feet away on the other side of the door. "It's a long story, sir," she replied. "And you need to rest." "I have all the time in the world," he said. "I just found out I almost don't have it." Aurora offered a half smile. "Another time. Now rest. Your heart went through a lot today." She headed for the door, but before she could leave, Maxwell called out to her. "Wait. Your name. Your real name." She paused with her hand on the doorknob, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt the impulse to say it. Her real name, the name that had been ripped from her, along with her career, her honor, and her entire life, but she restrained herself. "Aurora," she said. "Aurora Vila," and she exited. In the hallway, Cassandra and Dr. Thorne spoke in low voices, their heads close together. Seeing her emerge, they sharply separated, like two conspirators caught off guard. "Doctor, do you need anything else from me?" Aurora asked, maintaining the facade of the housekeeper. "No, miss," Thorne replied with a newfound coldness. "You've done enough for today. You may leave." Aurora inclined her head and walked towards the elevator. Every step was contained agony. She felt the doctor's gaze fixed on the back of her neck like a knife. When the elevator doors closed and Aurora disappeared, Thorne turned to Cassandra. His face, once so composed, was now distorted by something that looked very much like panic. "What's wrong, Elias?" she asked. "You're as white as a sheet." "That woman," Thorne said, almost voicelessly. "I know exactly who she is, and she's no Aurora Vela." "How do you know her?" "I know her too well." Thorne looked at the closed elevator, and something murky, dangerous, definitive shone in his eyes. "She's the only person in this world who can destroy both of us. You, me, and everything we've built." Cassandra felt a chill. "What do you mean?" Thorne leaned closer to her ear and lowered his voice to a poisonous whisper. "I mean that woman shouldn't be here, Cassandra." He paused. "She shouldn't be in this tower. She shouldn't be in this city," and his lips barely moved as he uttered the last words. "She shouldn't be alive." Cassandra looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, she felt true fear. Not of the ghost from the past that had just appeared, but of the look Dr. Thorne had at that instant. 3 days after the heart attack, Maxwell Sterling returned to his penthouse suite with medical orders for absolute rest. Dr. Thorne was adamant. No office, no meetings, no stress, just rest, a bland diet, and his medications 3 times a day, on schedule. But Maxwell Sterling had not built an empire by obeying orders, and something burned inside him more than any chest pain, an unanswered question. Who was the woman who had truly saved his life? That same afternoon, secluded in his private study, he called Ernest Sanchez, his head of security, who had been in his service for 20 years. A quiet, loyal man with large hands and the gaze of a watchdog. "Ernie, I need you to investigate someone. Discreetly. No one must know. Not Cassandra, not Thorne, no one." "Who is it, sir?" "One of the employees in the tower. Listed as Aurora Vela, cleaning staff. Started a few weeks ago." Maxwell leaned his elbows on the desk. "I want to know everything about her. Where she comes from, where she studied, what a woman like her is doing mopping my floors." Ernie frowned. "Is there something I should be concerned about, boss?" "I don't know," Maxwell admitted. "And that's exactly what bothers me. That woman said she was a cardiologist, and by the way she saved me, I believe her. But a cardiologist doesn't abandon a career to clean offices. Something happened. I want to know what." Ernie nodded and withdrew. That night Maxwell couldn't sleep, not because of his heart, but because of that woman's eyes, that impossible calm amidst the chaos, the way she had held his wrist and told him, "I won't leave you," with a certainty no expensive doctor he'd ever had conveyed. Meanwhile, across the city, In a modest apartment in Queens, Aurora Vance also couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor of her small living room, surrounded by papers, newspaper clippings, and yellowed folders. On the wall, she had pinned photographs and red strings connecting underlined names. It looked like a lair of obsession, and in a way, it was. At the center of it all, a photo, a young woman with a wide smile, identical to Aurora but younger, more radiant. Below it, in black marker, a single word, Renee, her younger sister. Renee Vance, 22 years old when she died. Aurora held the photo in her hands and looked at it as she had every night for 3 years. Renee had entered Metropolitan General Hospital for a simple, routine surgery, an arrhythmia corrected with a procedure. Aurora herself had performed dozens of times. But Aurora couldn't operate on her. Regulations prohibited operating on a family member, so she trusted. She trusted her colleagues. She trusted the system. She trusted Dr. Elias Thorne, head of the cardiology department, and Renee died on that operating table. Unexpected complications, they said. No one could have foreseen it, they said, but Aurora, devastated, had reviewed the file and found something that didn't fit. Altered medication dosages, erased records, an anesthesiologist who changed his story 3 times. When she started asking questions, when she demanded an investigation, the entire system closed ranks against her like a trap. Suddenly, it was Aurora who appeared in reports as negligent. It was her signature that appeared forged on documents she had never seen. It was her name they dragged through the mud in the medical committee, while Thorne, impeccable, declared with a mournful voice that Dr. Vance was not emotionally fit to practice. They revoked her license, they stripped her honor, they made her seem crazy, incompetent, a woman destroyed by grief. And no one listened when she screamed that her sister had been murdered by negligence, and then covered up. 3 years. 3 years it took her to rebuild from the ashes. 3 years investigating in the shadows, putting pieces together, until she discovered a name that connected Renee's death to something much larger. The Sterling Foundation, Maxwell's hospital empire, and the magnate's own personal physician, Elias Thorne. That's why Aurora had changed her name. That's why she had accepted a cleaning job in the Sterling Tower. Not by chance, but by strategy to get closer to the heart of the empire that had stolen her sister and buried the truth. What she never imagined was that she would end up saving the life of the man at the center of it all. And now, what do I do with you, Maxwell Sterling? She murmured to the ceiling. Are you part of this, or are you another victim who doesn't even know it? She didn't have the answer yet. The following days, Aurora returned to the tower, but something had changed. People looked at her differently. The other employees whispered as she passed. That's the one who saved the boss. They say she's a doctor. I don't believe it. Cassandra Hayes watched her from afar with hawk-like eyes. And Dr. Thorne, who now visited the tower with suspicious frequency, avoided crossing paths with her. But Aurora felt his presence like a cold shadow. One afternoon, Ernest Sanchez entered Maxwell's study with a thick folder under his arm and a serious face. Boss, I finished the investigation into Aurora Vela. Maxwell put down his newspaper. Speak. Aurora Vela doesn't exist, sir. Ernest placed the folder on the desk. It's a fake name. The birth certificate is a pretty good forgery, but fake. The fingerprint we registered in security when she started working matches another person. Who? Ernest opened the folder. On the first page, a photograph. The same woman, but in a white lab coat, stethoscope around her neck, smiling at what appeared to be a medical specialty graduation. Her real name is Aurora Vance, sir. Dr. Aurora Vance. She was a cardiologist at Metropolitan General Hospital, one of the best of her generation, according to records. Until 3 years ago. Maxwell took the photograph with slow fingers. What happened 3 years ago? She was accused of medical malpractice. Her medical license was revoked. There was a scandal. A patient died during surgery. Ernest paused. And here's the interesting part, boss. The patient who died was her own sister, Renee Vance. Silence fell like lead in the study. And the case, Ernest continued, was handled by the head of cardiology at the time, a doctor who later became an important figure in private medicine in this city. Ernest looked at him steadily. Dr. Elias Thorne, your personal physician, Mr. Sterling. Maxwell felt the air leave his body for the second time in a week, but this time it wasn't his heart, it was his mind. Thorne, he repeated. Thorne accused her? He signed the report that sank her? Yes. Maxwell stood up and walked to the window. His reflection in the glass returned the image of a man who suddenly wasn't sure of anything he had believed for years. Bring me the complete file on that case. Ernie, the doctor, the committee, everything. And I want to see the original report, Thorne signed. The original. Not the official copies. That will be difficult, boss. Those files are sealed. Nothing is sealed to me, Maxwell replied coldly. Get it. That night, Maxwell remained alone in the study with Aurora Vance's photograph on the desk. The brilliant cardiologist, the shattered woman, the maid who had saved his life without knowing, or knowing well, that he belonged to the same world that had annihilated her. And as he observed her, he understood two things at the same time. The first, that this woman had every reason in the world to hate him and everything he represented. The second, much more unsettling, that he couldn't stop thinking about her. 2 days later, Maxwell achieved the impossible. Through a contact on the old medical committee, he obtained a copy of the original report of the Renee Vance case, the document Thorne had signed in his own hand before it was altered for the official records. He read it 3 times, and by the third, his hands were trembling. The original report said something completely different from the official one. In the original, Thorne acknowledged that the doses administered to Renee Vance had been altered, that there had been a serious error during the procedure, and that Dr. Aurora Vance had not been present in the operating room at any time. Aurora was innocent. She always had been. She had been framed to cover up the truth. Maxwell held in his hands the proof that could clear that woman's name and, incidentally, sink his own personal physician. He was so engrossed in reading that he didn't hear the study door open behind him. Well, a soft, dangerous voice said, "And what is the master of the house doing reading such old papers at this hour?" Maxwell spun around, covering the document with his hand. In the doorway, silhouetted against the hallway light, stood Dr. Elias Thorne, and by his side, arms crossed and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, Cassandra Hayes. "You look agitated, Max," Cassandra said, walking in slowly. "You're not hurting yourself with all this paperwork, are you? You know what the doctor said about your heart." Thorne stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the hand with which Maxwell covered the document. "What are you reading, Mr. Sterling?" he asked, and his voice, for the first time, had lost all trace of its unctuous tone. Maxwell Sterling had negotiated with financial sharks bigger than any doctor or any fiancé with ulterior motives. He knew how to lie with a straight face, how to smile through gritted teeth, how to hide an ace up his sleeve without his pulse faltering. So, although his heart pounded within, he calmly closed the folder with studied ease and leaned back in his armchair. "I'm reading old foundation contracts," he said with feigned annoyance. "Audits from years ago. The board wants to review old accounts, and since they won't let me work as I should, I amuse myself with this." He looked at Thorne with a tired smile. "Do you find it very exciting, Doctor?" Thorne studied him for an instant. His eyes searched for any crack in the magnate's face, but Maxwell was a fortress. "You should rest, Mr. Sterling," he finally said. "Your heart needs peace. Stress could provoke another episode, and the next one might not have a happy ending." "I'll keep that in mind," Maxwell replied. "Thank you for your concern, Doctor. You're very thoughtful." Cassandra approached and kissed his forehead with a tenderness that now tasted like ice to Maxwell. "Let's go, Elias. Let's let my fiancé rest." And before leaving, she added with venomous sweetness, "Good night, my love. Take care of that little heart." When the door closed, Maxwell exhaled the air he had been holding. He opened the folder again, looked at the original report proving Aurora's innocence, and then put it in the safe behind the painting. For the first time in years, he felt that the walls of his own house had ears, and for the first time, an appalling idea began to form in his mind. An idea that had to do with his heart, with his pills, and with the word Thorne had used. Another episode. The next day, Maxwell did something he had never done before. He went down to the tower's kitchens, where the service staff ate and rested, and he sought out one person. He found her alone, washing cups at a sink, in her blue uniform with her hair pulled back. Aurora tensed when she saw him enter. A magnate in the kitchens was as strange as snow in the desert. "Mr. Sterling," she said, drying her hands, "do you need something? I need to speak with you alone." He looked around. 2 employees pretended not to listen. "No, not here. Follow me." He led her to a small, empty conference room on the 20th floor and closed the door. Aurora remained standing, alert, her back straight. She knew this moment would come. She just didn't know when or how. Maxwell looked at her for a long time, then said bluntly, "I know who you are." Aurora's heart skipped a beat, but her face didn't move. "I don't know what you're talking about, sir." "Aurora Vance," he pronounced slowly, savoring each syllable. "Doctor, cardiologist at Metropolitan General Hospital, the best of your generation, according to records, until they accused you of something you didn't do and took everything from you." Aurora paled, The name she had hidden for 3 years, spoken aloud by the most unexpected man. How? I have resources, Maxwell said. I had you investigated. After you saved me, I needed to know who you were. He took a step towards her, and I discovered much more than I expected. I discovered about your sister, Renee. The name Renee in Maxwell's mouth was like a blow. Aurora's eyes filled with tears she wouldn't allow herself to shed. You have no right to utter her name, she said, her voice cracking with rage. You know nothing. You don't know what it's like to watch your sister die on an operating table and then be blamed for the crime. You're right. I don't know. Maxwell lowered his voice. But I know something you might not. I found the original report, the one Thorne signed before they altered it. He paused. You weren't in that operating room, Aurora. The document proves it. You're innocent. You always were, and I can prove it. Aurora's world stopped. 3 years searching for that proof. 3 years knocking on doors that closed, chasing files that disappeared. And now the man who belonged to the empire that had destroyed her told her he had the truth hidden in a safe. Why? She whispered. Why would you help me? You're part of them. The Thorne Foundation. All of it is yours. Because you saved my life without owing me anything, Maxwell replied. Because you treated me like a human being when I treated you like a rag. And because, he stopped, as if honesty was difficult for him. Because I'm beginning to realize that the empire I built is rotten from within, and that the people I trusted may never have been on my side. Aurora looked at him differently. For the first time, she stopped seeing the arrogant magnate and saw a lonely man, surrounded by vultures, who was just beginning to understand. There's something else, Maxwell said, his voice growing serious. I need your opinion, your medical opinion, the real one, not that of the doctors I pay to tell me what I want to hear. I'm listening. Before my heart attack, I had been feeling unwell for months. Extreme fatigue, nausea, dizziness, palpitations at odd hours. Thorne said it was my heart, it was stress, it was age. He filled me with pills. Maxwell looked at her steadily. But that day in my office, before I collapsed, do you remember asking me about the symptoms? I saw your face. I saw something wasn't right. Tell me, what did you see? Aurora was silent for a few seconds. Then she spoke carefully, measuring each word. I saw things that didn't fit with a common heart attack. The color of your skin wasn't typical of a cardiac event. Your pupils were strangely dilated. There was tremor, excessive cold, sweating. She frowned. Mr. Sterling, the symptoms you describe, added to what I saw, aren't just from a sick heart. Fatigue, nausea, progressive dizziness, palpitations. That could also be something else. What thing? Aurora looked him in the eyes. Slow, cumulative intoxication. Something administered in small doses over weeks or months to mimic a natural deterioration of the heart, so that when you finally pass, everyone will say, "Poor man, it was his heart. He was already sick." She lowered her voice. Sir, I believe someone might be poisoning you. The silence in the conference room was absolute. Maxwell slumped into a chair, as white as paper. The pills, he murmured. Thorne gives me the pills 3 times a day. Cassandra makes sure I take them. She always brings them to me herself. He looked up, horrified. My God, Aurora, don't jump to conclusions yet, she said, though her own mind was already screaming the same thing. We need proof. I need to analyze those medications and what you eat, what you drink. If there's a toxin, let me find it. Can you do it? I was a cardiologist, but I studied clinical toxicology. I know what to look for. Aurora approached. But you have to trust me blindly, and from this moment on, you have to pretend you're still taking everything they give you. You can't raise suspicion. If whoever is poisoning you discovers we know, they will accelerate the final blow. Do you understand? Maxwell nodded, his jaw clenched. I understand. For the first time, they were both on the same side, the maid and the magnate, the destroyed woman and the betrayed man, united by a truth that could cost them both their lives. That night, Aurora stayed after her shift. With Maxwell's complicity, she accessed his private bathroom in his penthouse, where he kept his medication bottles. She took samples of each pill, carefully wrapping them in labeled baggies. She also collected a sample of the tea Cassandra prepared for him every night to help him sleep better. She took everything to a small clandestine laboratory that a loyal old colleague secretly lent her. She worked until dawn with the precision of someone who remembered every technique as if she had never left her white coat. And at dawn, when the last analysis displayed its result on the screen, Aurora froze in front of the monitor. The heart pills were clean, they were what they claimed to be. But the tea, the innocent nightly tea, the one sweet Cassandra prepared with her own hands so my love can rest. The tea contained an increasing concentration of digitoxin, a compound that, in controlled doses, was heart medicine, but accumulated day after day in an already weakened body, was a perfect poison, undetectable in a common autopsy, capable of causing exactly what had happened to Maxwell: arrhythmias, cardiac arrest, natural death. Aurora put a hand to her mouth. Not only had she found the proof, she had found that the next cup of tea could be his last. She took her phone with trembling hands and dialed the emergency number Maxwell had given her. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then, on the other end of the line, instead of Maxwell's deep voice, Cassandra Hayes' soft, smiling voice answered. "Hello? How odd. This is my fiancé's private phone. Who's calling at this hour? Who's calling at this hour?" Cassandra's voice repeated, sweet and sharp, on the other end of the line. Aurora closed her eyes for a second. Her heart pounded in her chest. If she faltered, everything would fall apart. So she took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice was that of any ordinary employee, monotonous and boring. "Good evening. This is San Rafael Pharmacy," she said with a neutral accent. "We have a pending delivery for Mr. Sterling. We're calling to confirm the address." There was a silence on the other end. Aurora could feel the suspicion hanging in the air. "A pharmacy calls at this hour?" Cassandra asked. "Service, madam. Dr. Thorne left the prescription. Shall I confirm delivery or cancel?" Thorne's name was the key. Cassandra relaxed instantly. "Ah, the doctor. Yes, of course. Tomorrow first thing. At the penthouse. Good night," and she hung up. Aurora let the phone drop onto the lab table and slumped into the chair, trembling. She had been one step from the abyss, but now she knew 2 things with absolute certainty: that Maxwell was being poisoned with digitoxin in Cassandra's tea, and that Cassandra had total access to his phone, his home, his life. That same morning, Aurora found a way to contact Maxwell through a secure channel via Ernest Sanchez, the head of security. Maxwell had decided to trust Ernie, the only man in the tower who had been by his side for 20 years without ever asking for anything in return. The 3 met at dawn in an abandoned warehouse on the ground floor of the tower, away from cameras and listening ears. "It's digitoxin," Aurora said, showing them the results. "It's in the nightly tea, not the pill. Whoever prepares it knows exactly what they're doing. The doses are increasing, calculated to make your heart fail little by little, until it looks like a natural death." Maxwell read the papers. His face hardened. "Cassandra," he said, "prepares that tea for me every night, and has for months. And Thorne signs the prescriptions and handles your diagnoses," Aurora added. "They work together. She administers the poison. He covers it up with medical jargon. When you die, he will sign the death certificate, cardiac arrest, pre-existing condition. No one will investigate. And Cassandra, as fiancé and heir, inherits everything," Ernie concluded somberly. "The foundation, the companies, the accounts, everything." Maxwell remained silent for a long time. Betrayal had a metallic taste in his mouth. The woman who slept beside him, who kissed his forehead, who told him, take care of that little heart, she had been slowly killing him for months. "We have to go to the police," Ernest said. "No," Aurora replied firmly. "Not yet. The digitoxin in the tea isn't enough. A good lawyer would say it was prescribed, that it was a dosing error Cassandra wasn't even aware of. We need to catch them in the act. We need proof that will sink them without escape. And we need something more." She looked at Maxwell. "We need to know why. A woman doesn't poison her fiancé just for money. There's something bigger behind it. Something that connects Thorne, Cassandra, and your foundation." "And meanwhile," Maxwell asked, "what do I do? Keep drinking poison with a smile?" "No," Aurora said. "Starting today, you don't drink that tea, but you pretend to drink it. I'm going to give you something." She took a small vial from her bag, activated charcoal, and a protective agent that will begin to clean the digitoxin from your system. Little by little, you'll regain strength. But to Cassandra and Thorne, you must continue to appear a sick, weak, dying man. The more confident they are, the closer we will be to catching them. Maxwell looked at her with a mix of admiration and something warmer he didn't want to name. "You're extraordinary. You know that?" Aurora looked away. "I'm a doctor. It's my job, isn't it?" he said softly. "It's much more than your job." In the following days, a dangerous chess game began. Maxwell feigned weakness, dragged his feet, ate little, complained of dizziness. Cassandra cared for him with perfect dedication, brought him tea every night, watched him drink it, and Maxwell, with a pounding heart, pretended to swallow it, while later spitting it into a handkerchief that he secretly handed to Aurora for new analyses. But Cassandra Hayes was not foolish and began to notice things. She noticed that her fiancé, instead of weakening, seemed to regain his color. She noticed that the maid, Aurora Vela, lingered around the house too frequently. She noticed glances Maxwell gave the employee when he thought no one was watching. One night, while serving him tea, Cassandra sat on the edge of the bed and stroked his face. "My love, you seem different lately," she said. "Stronger, but also more distant. Are you hiding something from me?" "I'm tired, Cassandra, that's all," Maxwell replied, meeting her gaze. She smiled. "Drink your tea, my love. It does you so much good." And she watched him without blinking until he drank. Maxwell brought the cup to his lips. That night, he couldn't spit out the contents. Cassandra didn't leave him alone for an instant. He drank. The next morning, Aurora found him pale, with palpitations. A direct dose, not lethal, but enough to alarm. "She suspects," Aurora said, taking his pulse. "Last night, she made sure you drank it. She's testing. If we fail again, she'll accelerate her plan. We have to act soon." But Cassandra got ahead of them. That afternoon, as Aurora walked through the tower lobby, everything happened at once. Cassandra Hayes appeared, accompanied by 2 police officers, Dr. Thorne, and a building management official. In front of dozens of employees who stopped to watch, she raised her voice with studied theatricality. "There she is," she pointed at Aurora with an accusing finger. "That woman is an imposter. She got hired here with fake documents. She's pretending to be a doctor when she has no license. She's been deceiving Mr. Sterling, manipulating him in his weakened state to steal his fortune." Aurora froze in the middle of the lobby. All eyes fell on her. "That's not true," she said, raising her voice. "I saved Mr. Sterling's life." "Saved his life?" Cassandra laughed. "You're not a doctor. Your license was revoked 3 years ago for malpractice. You killed a patient. It says so here." She waved some papers. "Dr. Thorne, tell them you were on that case." Thorne stepped forward with a falsely mournful expression. "Unfortunately, it's true," he said with a solemn voice. "This woman was disqualified from practicing medicine. She is dangerous. A patient died under her responsibility. Having her near a man with a heart as delicate as Mr. Sterling's is an unacceptable risk." Murmurs swept through the lobby like wildfire. "She killed a patient. She's a fraud. Poor Mr. Sterling." The same employees who had admired her days before now looked at her with contempt and fear. Aurora felt the ground open beneath her feet. 3 years later, the same lie, the same public humiliation, the same Thorne twisting the knife with his unctuous voice. History was repeating itself like a nightmare. "That's a lie," Aurora said, her voice trembling with rage. "I'm innocent. They framed me. There's proof." "Proof?" Cassandra smiled cruelly. "The only proof here is an unlicensed woman who got into my fiancé's house with a false identity." She turned to the police. "Take her away. I want her prosecuted for impersonation, fraud, and falsification of documents." One of the police officers approached Aurora and took her arm. "Miss, you'll have to come with us. Let go of me." "I didn't do anything." Aurora desperately searched the crowd. "Maxwell! Mr. Sterling!" But Maxwell wasn't there. Cassandra had orchestrated everything for a time when she knew her fiancé was resting upstairs, sedated, unaware of anything. The officer handcuffed her, the cold metal on her wrists, the same hands that had saved lives, that had revived the heart of the city's most powerful man. It brought a tear she couldn't hold back. As they dragged her towards the exit before everyone's eyes, Cassandra approached and whispered in her ear, savoring every word. "I warned you, girl. I told you I'd find out who you are, and now you're going to disappear from this tower, from this city, and from Maxwell's life forever, just like your little sister disappeared." Aurora sharply turned her head, her eyes wide with terror. "What did you say?" she whispered. "How do you know about my sister?" But Cassandra only smiled, and in that smile, Aurora understood, with a chill that froze her blood, that this woman was not only trying to kill Maxwell. She knew something about Renee's death, something terrible, something that connected her directly to the tragedy that had destroyed Aurora's life 3 years ago. And as the patrol car doors closed behind her, Aurora swore one thing to herself, that she would get out of this, no matter the cost, because now it wasn't just about saving Maxwell, it was about finally discovering the whole truth about her sister's death. The precinct cell smelled of dampness and cheap disinfectant. Aurora Vance sat on a concrete bench, her wrists still marked by the handcuffs, staring at the stained ceiling. Again, they had knocked her down again. Again, Thorne had twisted his velvety knife, and this time, a new piece had revealed itself on the board. "Cassandra knew about Renee, just like your little sister disappeared. The words echoed in her head like church bells. But Aurora was no longer the broken woman of 3 years ago. This time, she wasn't alone. Upstairs, in his penthouse, Maxwell awoke from a heavy, artificial sleep. His head throbbed. Cassandra had ordered the nurse to help him rest with a sedative. When he managed to clear his head, he looked at the clock. 4 hours had passed. And something a cold intuition told him something terrible had happened while he slept. He rang the bell furiously. Instead of the nurse, Ernest Sanchez entered, his face distraught. "Boss, I have to tell you something, and you're not going to like it." "Speak." Dr. Vance was taken away by the police. This afternoon in the lobby, in front of everyone, Mrs. Hayes accused her of fraud, impersonation, and falsification. Dr. Thorne backed the accusation. Ernest clenched his fists. "They orchestrated everything for a time when you were sedated, so you couldn't defend her." Maxwell sat up abruptly, and for the first time in weeks, there was no weakness in his eyes. There was fire. "Those damned people!" He stood, still shaky but resolute. "My clothes, my car, my lawyer. Now, boss, your heart." "My heart is better than those two think, thanks to that woman they just jailed," Maxwell replied, "and I will not allow them to destroy her as they destroyed her sister. Not again, not while I breathe." While Maxwell was getting things in motion, another rebellion, much humbler but just as fierce, was brewing in the tower's kitchens. Mrs. Elena Rodriguez, the cook who had fed half the tower for 30 years, dropped her wooden spoon upon hearing the news. She was in her late 60s, short, plump, with calloused hands and a huge heart. She had grown fond of Aurora from the first day, when she saw her arrive, quiet, sad, with an elegance that didn't fit a cleaning uniform. "They took my girl," she exclaimed. "My Aurora, that won't stand." "Mrs. Elena, don't get involved," another employee warned her. "That woman turned out to be a fraud." "Fraud?" Mrs. Elena tore off her apron. "That girl saved the boss's life with her own hands while Mrs. Hayes just stood there watching without lifting a finger. I was there. I saw it. And no fraud at all. The only one who stinks to high heaven here is that Cassandra." Beside her, leaning against the doorframe, stood George Miller, the tower's doorman, a skinny, mustachioed man, as gossipy as they come, and as loyal as few. George knew everything about the tower, who came in, who went out, when, with whom. The cameras were his, the records were his, nothing escaped him. "Well, Mrs. Elena, I have something that might interest you," George said, lowering his voice. "Remember that little doctor, Thorne? He's been coming to the tower at odd hours for weeks, always goes into the study with Mrs. Hayes. And me, being the busybody I am, I decided to check the recordings." He smiled slyly. "And I have videos, Mrs. Elena, videos of the two of them talking alone, and once, they even let something slip about the tea and about hurrying things up before it's too late." Mrs. Elena's eyes widened. "George, that's proof. We have to give it to someone." "To whom?" "Mrs. Elena. The police already took her away, and Mrs. Hayes has half the world bought off." "To the boss," a voice said from the door. Both turned. It was Ernest Sanchez. "To the boss," Ernest repeated. "Maxwell Sterling is awake, he's furious, and he's on the doctor's side. George, those videos are going to save a lot of lives. Come with me." Meanwhile, at the precinct, the doors burst open. Maxwell Sterling entered like a hurricane, with his most formidable lawyer at his side and the force of an empire behind him. In less than an hour, with legal pressure, calls to the right people, and the threat of a monumental scandal, he secured Aurora's release on bail while the irregularities of the case were reviewed. When Aurora emerged from the cell and saw him waiting for her, something broke inside her. 3 years of carrying everything alone, and suddenly, there was someone waiting for her on the other side of the bars. "You came," she murmured. "Of course I came," Maxwell said. "They jailed you for defending me. Did you think I'd stay in bed?" Aurora said nothing. For just an instant, she let her defenses down, and Maxwell did something that surprised them both. He hugged her, an awkward hug from a man unaccustomed to hugging, but firm, protective, true. "We're going to clear your name," he whispered in her ear. "The real Aurora Vance. I promise you." That night, everyone gathered at one of Maxwell's safe houses, far from the penthouse. Aurora, Maxwell, Ernest, Mrs. Elena, and George, an improbable alliance. The magnate, the fallen doctor, the loyal guard, the big-hearted cook, and the nosy doorman, David against Goliath. George showed the videos on a laptop. In the blurry but clear recordings, Thorne and Cassandra were seen meeting alone, speaking in low voices. In one, Cassandra said impatiently, "How much longer?" "Elias." I've been at this for months. I want it over now. And Thorne replied, patience. It has to look natural. Like with the other one. Like with the other one. Aurora repeated, chilled. Like with what other one? Mrs. Elena put a hand on her shoulder. My dear, there's something you have to see. George found something else. George, uncomfortable, pulled out an old folder he had rescued from the dusty archives of the Foundation, from when it still kept paper files. Doctor, when I heard about your sister, I started looking in the old Foundation archives and found this. He handed her the folder with trembling hands. I don't know if you want to see it, but you deserve the truth. Aurora took the folder, opened it, and her world collapsed. It was the complete, real file of Renee Vance's death, the one they had hidden for 3 years, and in it, everything was crystal clear. Renee had not died from a surgical error. Renee had died poisoned with digitoxin, the same substance, the same method, the same increasing doses they were now using against Maxwell. But there was more, much more. The file contained the name of the administrator, who at the time managed the unit where Renee died. The woman who authorized the medications, who signed the orders, who later ordered the records to be purged. The name was Cassandra Hayes. Aurora put her hand to her mouth, air escaping her lungs. Cassandra. Cassandra had been there. Cassandra had signed her sister's death. Cassandra and Thorne had been perfecting the same crime for years. Slow poisoning, medical cover-up, then cashing in. Renee had been one of their first victims. Perhaps she had discovered something. Perhaps she saw what she shouldn't have, and they silenced her. And then they framed Aurora to bury any suspicion. That's why, Aurora whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. That's why they destroyed me, too. It wasn't a coincidence. I started asking questions about Renee's death, and they took my license. They took everything so no one would believe me, so I'd look like a crazy woman obsessed with grief. Maxwell clenched his fists until his knuckles cracked. That woman killed your sister, he said, his voice hoarse with fury, and she sleeps in my bed. She's been preparing the same poison for me with her own hands for months, smiling at me, saying, my love. Mrs. Elena crossed herself. George swallowed hard. Ernest closed the laptop, and Aurora, for the first time in 3 years, felt the pain transform into something else, something cold, clear, unstoppable. Now I understand everything, she said, wiping away her tears and standing up. And it's over. Their time is up. She looked at each of her improbable allies one by one. We have the videos, we have the file, we have the poison analysis, but it's still not enough to sink them without escape. They will deny, they will buy witnesses, they will destroy evidence. We need to catch them in the act, red-handed, in front of witnesses they can't buy. And how do we do that? Ernest asked. Aurora turned to Maxwell, and in her gaze, a dangerous and brilliant plan was forming. We're going to give them exactly what they want, she said. Maxwell, you're going to die. Everyone looked at her in silence, not understanding. You're going to fake your own death, Aurora continued. And when Cassandra and Thorne believe they've won, that the Empire is theirs, that's when we'll catch them all. But for that, she looked at Maxwell gravely. I'm going to have to bring you to the brink of death for real, and only I will be able to bring you back. Do you trust me enough to put your life in my hands again? Maxwell held her gaze, and without a second of doubt, replied, I would put my life in your hands 1,000 times, Aurora Vance. The plan was as dangerous as it was brilliant. Aurora explained it in every last detail with the coldness of a surgeon returning to her craft. I'm going to induce a controlled cardiac arrest in you, she told Maxwell. With a precise combination of drugs, your heart will stop long enough for any doctor, including Thorne, to declare you dead. There will be no pulse, no breathing. To everyone, you'll be dead. She paused, and I'm going to bring you back. I have a window of minutes, not one more. If I fail, there's no second chance. Maxwell looked at her without blinking. I trust you. When they believe you're dead, Cassandra and Thorne will drop their guard. They'll think they've won. And then, in front of witnesses they don't control, we'll expose them with everything. The videos, Renee's file, the poison analysis. Aurora took a deep breath. But it has to be in front of the right people. We need the district attorney, the press, and someone from the Foundation who isn't bought off. Ernest took on the impossible. He contacted an honest prosecutor, District Attorney Brenda Carter, known for not bending to money. At first, she was suspicious. But when she saw George's videos and Renee Vance's altered file, her face hardened. If this is true, the DA said, we're looking at a serial homicide disguised as natural death for years within a medical institution. I need them caught in the act. Catch them confessing or acting, and I'll put them in jail forever. The plan was set in motion, but the villains didn't stay still. Cassandra Hayes sensed something was slipping through her fingers. Her fiancé, who should have been agonizing, seemed stronger. The maid, who should have been rotting in a cell, had been released on bail thanks to Maxwell. And worse, the staff looked at her differently. They whispered. They fell silent when she entered. "Elias, we have to hurry," she told Thorne one night, pacing like a caged lioness. "That little doctor is stirring something up. I feel it. If we wait any longer, she'll expose us." "Calm down," Thorne replied. "Tomorrow I'll increase the dose. In 3, maximum 4 days, Maxwell will have the definitive heart attack. This time, there won't be any miraculous maid to revive him. It will be clean, it will be natural, and everything will be ours." But that same night, chance almost ruined everything. George, the nosy doorman, went down to the tower's basement to back up more recordings onto a memory stick. He was so focused he didn't hear the footsteps. When he looked up, Dr. Thorne was standing in the doorway, watching him with icy eyes. "Good evening, George," Thorne said softly. "What are you doing at this hour?" "Checking cameras. Post-maintenance, doctor," George stammered, hiding the memory stick in his pocket. A camera broke down, and Thorne approached slowly, looked at the screens, looked at George, and a smile that boded nothing good appeared on his lips. "You know, George, curiosity is a dangerous virtue. Many curious people have ended up sick." He took a small syringe from his lab coat pocket, almost tenderly. "And you look like you don't take good care of your blood pressure." George recoiled, as white as chalk. "Doctor, I didn't see anything, I swear." At that instant, the basement lights suddenly came on and a firm voice resonated. "Drop that, Thorne." It was Ernest Sanchez, accompanied by 2 security guards. Thorne quickly put away the syringe and recomposed his smile. "Ernest, how opportune. I was just chatting with good old George." He adjusted his lab coat. "Good night, everyone," and he left. But the message was clear to everyone. Thorne suspected and was willing to kill anyone who stood in his way. "He almost got me, boss," George told Maxwell, still trembling. "That man had a syringe. He was going to prick me like a dog." "It's over," Maxwell said. "I'm not putting any more people in danger. We're moving up the plan to tonight." Aurora nodded gravely. "Then it has to be perfect. There will be no rehearsal." Before each took their position, Maxwell sought Aurora out alone in the dimly lit hallway. He took her hands. They were cold and firm at the same time. "Aurora," he said with a seriousness she had never heard from him. "If this goes wrong, if you don't manage to bring me back, don't say that," she interrupted him. "I'm going to bring you back. I've done it 100 times. Let me finish." He squeezed her hands. "If this goes wrong, I want you to know that these past months with you, I discovered something that money never gave me. I discovered what it's like for someone to truly care for you, not out of self-interest, not for my fortune, just because." He lowered his voice. "You gave me back my life twice, Aurora Vance. The life of my heart, and the other life, the one that truly matters." Aurora felt a lump in her throat, 3 years of armor, and this man was melting her in a dark hallway, minutes before she would stop his heart with her own hands. "Don't get sentimental on me now, Sterling," she said, feigning toughness, though her voice trembled. "I need your heart calm for what's to come." She looked at him steadily. "And I promise you one thing. I'm going to bring you back because we still have unfinished business, Renee's business." And she stopped, not daring to say more. "And other business." Maxwell smiled faintly. He understood everything she didn't say. "Let's go then," he murmured. "To die for a while." That night, everything was arranged. D.A. Carter and 2 undercover agents positioned themselves in a van outside the penthouse. A trusted press contact awaited the signal. Mrs. Elena, George, and Ernest took their places, and Aurora, hidden in an adjoining room with her medical kit, prepared the syringes, the one that would stop Maxwell's heart and the one that would bring him back. Maxwell, in his bedroom, waited for Cassandra to bring him his 9 o'clock tea. As every night, Cassandra entered with the immaculate tray, clear's throat, smiling. "Your tea, my love, so you can rest well." "Thank you, Cassandra," he said, taking the cup, and this time, looking her in the eyes, he drank. He drank it all in front of her, spitting nothing out. Cassandra smiled, satisfied. What she didn't know was that the cup was clean, and minutes earlier, Aurora had injected Maxwell, in a hidden crease of his arm, the exact dose that would stop his heart with surgical precision. Within minutes, Maxwell began to feel the effect. The world slowed down. His breathing became heavy. He looked towards the slightly ajar door, where he knew Aurora was watching the clock with the timer running, and he gave her, unseen by Cassandra, One last look of absolute trust. "Cassandra," he said, his voice growing weaker. I don't feel well." "What's wrong, my love?" Cassandra approached, and in her voice, there was no alarm, only anticipation. "My chest. I can't breathe." Maxwell clutched his heart, just like that first time in the office, but now it was an act, staged over a lethal truth. "Cassandra, call the doctor." Maxwell fell from the bed to the floor, his body convulsed. And then, before Cassandra's eyes, Maxwell Sterling's heart stopped. The portable monitor Thorne had installed to watch his heart emitted a flat line and a continuous, sharp, definitive beep. Cassandra didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't call for help. She stood watching the motionless body of her fiancé, and on her perfect face, a smile of absolute triumph slowly bloomed. She pulled out her phone and dialed. "Elias," she said in a serene voice. "It's done. It's over. Come and sign the certificate." She paused and let out a low, chilling laugh. Finally, everything is ours. The empire, the foundation, every penny, just as we said. Clean, natural, perfect. She walked to the window, gazing at the city lights that now belonged to her, and whispered to the glass, savoring each word. "Goodbye, Maxwell. You were as easy to kill as that meddling little girl from the hospital 3 years ago. Renee, wasn't it? The maid's sister." She laughed again. What a useless family. Both of them fell just as easily. In the adjoining room, hidden behind the door, Aurora heard every word the confession. Her sister's death sentence, pronounced with a coldness that froze her blood. Her hands trembled on the syringe that would bring Maxwell back. The timer was running. 3 minutes since cardiac arrest. She had, at most, 2 more before the damage was irreversible. But for an instant, just one, Aurora closed her eyes and let the tears and rage course through her like lightning. And outside, in the van, DA Brenda Carter took off her headphones, looked at her agents, and said in a voice of steel, "Recorded confession, confessed homicide of Renee Vance, and attempted murder of Maxwell Sterling. Load your weapons. Gentlemen, it's time. Let's go get them." Inside the penthouse, Aurora's timer showed 3 minutes and 40 seconds since the arrest. Maxwell's heart had been stopped for too long. Every second was an eternity. Cassandra still stood by the window, her back to the body, talking on the phone with Thorne, intoxicated with triumph. It was time. Aurora emerged from the adjoining room like a shadow. She crossed the room silently, knelt beside Maxwell, and with swift, precise hands, plunged the adrenaline syringe directly into his heart. She pressed the plunger all the way down. "Come back, Sterling," she murmured through gritted teeth, beginning compressions. "Don't fail me now. Come back." Cassandra turned at the sound of the voice, and what she saw petrified her. The maid, the doctor, the woman she herself had ordered jailed, was kneeling beside her fiancé's corpse, bringing him back to life. "You!" Cassandra shrieked. "What are you doing here? Let him go. He's dead. Let him die. Get away," Aurora roared, without ceasing compressions. Under her hands, Maxwell's chest convulsed. The monitor that had displayed a flat line trembled. A peak, another, and suddenly a weak, irregular rhythm, but a rhythm. Maxwell coughed, took a desperate breath, and opened his eyes. He was alive. Cassandra recoiled, as white as the death she thought she had achieved. "No, it can't be. He was dead. I saw him. He was dead." "He was," Aurora said, helping Maxwell to sit up. "But I'm a doctor, and a doctor, when she can, brings people back. Remember that, Cassandra? That's exactly what you took from my sister." At that instant, the bedroom door burst open. DA Brenda Carter entered with 2 armed agents. Behind them, Ernest, Mrs. Elena, George, and a reporter with a camera rolling, capturing everything. The lights came on, the trap closed. "Cassandra Hayes," the DA announced, displaying a warrant. "You are under arrest for the murder of Renee Vance, the attempted murder of Maxwell Sterling, fraud, and falsification. Anything you say will be recorded. Though, frankly," she added, holding up a recorder, "you've already said quite a lot." Cassandra looked around, cornered. The cameras, the agents, Maxwell alive, sitting on the floor, looking at her with a contempt that pierced her. You don't understand," she stammered. "It was Thorne. It was all Thorne's idea. You just administered the poison with your own hands for months. You signed Renee Vance's death 3 years ago and just confessed everything over an open phone," the DA said. "Don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to accuse your accomplice. A lot of time in prison." As if invoked, Dr. Elias Thorne arrived at that moment, briefcase in hand, ready to sign the death certificate. He entered the penthouse whistling, and as he crossed the bedroom threshold, he froze. Maxwell Sterling, whom he believed dead, was sitting alive, breathing. Aurora Vance, whom he believed destroyed, stood before him with her head held high, and the DA, agents, and cameras were waiting for him. "Dr. Thorne," Brenda Carter said, "just in time. You were coming to sign a death certificate, weren't you? What a shame. The patient is in excellent health." Thorne dropped his briefcase. For the first time in his life, his unctuous voice completely failed him. This is a misunderstanding." "No, Doctor," Aurora said, stepping towards him. And finally, after 3 years, she faced him face to face, without masks, without uniform, without fear. "This is justice. Do you remember me, Doctor? Aurora Vance? You took my license, my honor, and my name to bury my sister's murder. You made me out to be crazy, negligent, a murderer. For 3 years, I carried that weight." Her voice trembled, but it didn't break. "And here is the proof you both hid for so long." Maxwell, helped by Ernest, stood up, and from the safe Ernest had opened minutes earlier, he took out the original report. "The report you signed before you altered it, Thorne," Maxwell said. "The one that says Aurora was never in that operating room. The one that proves digitoxin killed Renee Vance. The same poison you and Cassandra had been giving me for months." He threw it at the doctor's feet. "I kept it all this time, waiting for this moment." George stepped forward, puffed up with pride, and held up the memory stick. "And here are the little videos, my esteemed doctor. You and Mrs. Hayes chatting comfortably about the tea and about hurrying things up. They came out in HD, even." He smiled. "Curiosity can be dangerous, but sometimes it saves lives, don't you think?" Mrs. Elena approached, hands on her hips. "And just so you know, I always knew this girl had a good heart from day one, and that the other one smelled rotten, even with all her French perfume." Thorne looked at Cassandra. Cassandra looked at Thorne, and at that instant, the criminal alliance that had bound them for years shattered. "It was her," Thorne shouted. "Cassandra planned everything. I just followed instructions. Liar. You're the doctor. You got the poison," Cassandra shrieked. "Quiet, both of you," the DA ordered as the agents handcuffed them. "You'll clarify it for the judge. Take them away." As Cassandra was dragged towards the exit, disheveled, without her mask of elegance, she passed Aurora. She shot her a look of pure hatred. "Enjoy your moment, maid," she spat. In the end, both Vance sisters ended up with nothing. "You'll end up alone too." Aurora looked at her without a trace of fear and replied with devastating calm. "You're wrong, Cassandra. Renee didn't die with nothing. She died innocent, and I'm not alone." She looked around, at Mrs. Elena, at George, at Ernest, at the DA, at Maxwell. "Look closely. I'm more accompanied than you've ever been in your entire life. You get a cell. I get the truth and my name." Cassandra had no reply. She and Thorne were led away amidst the flashes of cameras already broadcasting the scandal across the city. When the penthouse finally emptied of police and reporters, Maxwell and Aurora were left alone, standing in the middle of the bedroom, their hearts still racing from everything they had experienced. "We did it," Aurora murmured, sinking onto the edge of the bed, exhausted. "After 3 years, we did it. Renee's name will be cleared, and so will mine." "You did it," Maxwell said, sitting beside her. "I just provided the body," he smiled, "and it almost cost me my life, by the way." "Remind me not to let you stop my heart again," Aurora laughed. A tired, wet, liberating laugh. Her first true laugh in 3 years. Maxwell looked at her. He truly looked at her, like that first time in the hospital. But now, without astonishment, without debt, only with a quiet certainty that grew in his freshly revived chest. "Aurora," he said, taking her hand, "there's something I have to tell you, and I can't keep it quiet any longer. Not after being dead for a few minutes. When you're near death, they say you see what truly matters." He paused, searching for words, and in those minutes when my heart stopped, I only thought of one thing, one single person, of coming back to see you. Aurora stood very still, her heart pounding in her throat. "Maxwell, let me finish," he said with a tenderness he had never shown. "I know I belong to the world that hurt you. I know you have 1,000 reasons not to trust someone like me, but I also know that never, in my entire life, has anyone looked at me the way you looked at me on the first day. Not with fear of my money, not with self-interest, just as a man worth saving." He squeezed her hand. "And since then, I can't stop thinking about you. I love you, Aurora Vance. With this heart, you returned to me twice." The silence was filled with everything left unsaid. Aurora felt 3 years of walls crumble. She opened her mouth to reply, But before she could utter a single word, Maxwell suddenly clutched his chest. He winced in pain, and his face again lost color. "Maxwell, what's wrong?" Aurora jumped up, the doctor within her reactivating instantly. "Maxwell," and the man who had just declared his love collapsed again onto the bed. "Maxwell, stay with me." Aurora didn't lose a second. She laid him down, felt for his pulse thready, chaotic. Her training screamed the truth. It wasn't a new poisoning. It was the price of what she had done that night. Stopping a heart and reviving it isn't free. The organ, already stressed by months of digitoxin, was now reacting with a dangerous arrhythmia. "Ernest, the kit, quickly!" Ernest, who hadn't yet left the penthouse, burst in with the medical kit. Aurora prepared the medication with steady hands, calculated the dose to the milligram, and administered it. Then she leaned over Maxwell, took his face in her hands, and spoke into his ear with a voice that was no longer just a doctor's. "Listen carefully. Maxwell Sterling, you just told me you love me, and you fainted before hearing my answer. Does that seem fair to you?" Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Don't you dare leave now, because I still haven't told you that I love you too. That I love you too, you stubborn, arrogant, impossible man. So come back so I can tell you to your face." And as if those words held more power than any drug, Maxwell's heart rhythm began to stabilize beat by beat until it calmly returned to its normal course. Maxwell slowly opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Aurora's face, bathed in tears, a handspan from his own. "You said you love me," he whispered with a weak smile. "Don't play deaf," she replied, laughing and crying at the same time. "I said it, and I don't plan to repeat it. If you're going to faint every time, then I'll have to take very good care of my heart," he murmured. "Now I have a very important reason to keep it beating." And there, in that bedroom that had been the scene of betrayal and death, the two embraced for a long, unhurried moment, like two shipwrecked people finally reaching solid ground. The months that followed were a time of rebuilding. The scandal rocked the entire city. Cassandra Hayes and Elias Thorne were prosecuted and sentenced to long prison terms. The investigation, once the door was opened, uncovered a chilling truth. Renee and Maxwell had not been their only victims. For years, within a certain unit of the foundation, several wealthy patients had died of heart conditions just after changing their wills. A macabre business of inheritances and poison. Justice, finally, reached them all. Dr. Aurora Vance's name was completely exonerated. The medical committee, ashamed, reviewed her case in light of the original report and publicly reinstated her professional license with honors. 3 years after it had been snatched away, Aurora again held in her hands the document that accredited her as what she had always been, one of the best cardiologists of her generation. But the day she cried the most was not that day. It was the day she could finally bring flowers to Renee's grave without the shadow of guilt and lies over her. "We did it, little sister," she whispered, kneeling before the tombstone. "Your name is clear. Everyone knows you were an innocent victim, and those who harmed you are paying. Rest in peace. I can finally rest too." Maxwell, a few steps away, waited in silence, respecting her grief. When Aurora stood up, he took her hand. "Renee would be proud of you," he said. "I know," she replied, drying her tears. "And that's why what comes next, I owe to her." What came next was a dream come true. Maxwell, transformed by everything he had experienced, decided to root out corruption from the foundation that his name had stained. He fired the corrupt, restructured everything, and dedicated a fortune to a new project, directed by the only person he trusted blindly with his heart, in every sense, Aurora. Thus, the Renee Vance Heart Center was born, a free cardiac care hospital for families who couldn't afford it, built in memory of a young woman who died from the greed of a few. At the entrance, a bronze plaque with Renee's smiling face greeted every patient. Aurora became its director. Mrs. Elena was put in charge of the kitchen, where she fed patients and families with broths that she swore cured more than any pill. George got the position of head of security and surveillance and walked the halls with a badge he showed everyone who would look, bragging that he, with his videos, had unmasked the city's most dangerous criminals. Ernest Sanchez, loyal to the end, remained by Maxwell's side as his right-hand man and, above all, as his friend. 1 year after that night, the Renee Vance Heart Center dawned, adorned with white flowers. But that day, there were no patients in the garden. There were chairs, music, and a smiling crowd. Because that day, Maxwell Sterling and Aurora Vance were getting married. It was not a millionaire's wedding, though he was one. It was a community wedding. Nurses attended, patients who had recovered their health, humble families the clinic had saved. Mrs. Elena cried from the first chord of the music, hugging a bouquet, repeating to anyone who would listen. I knew it. I always knew these two would end up together. George, dressed in a suit 2 sizes too big, offered to guard the entrance so no thorns would sneak in, eliciting laughter from the guests. Aurora walked towards the altar in a simple, elegant dress, without ostentatious jewelry, with a single flower in her hair. Maxwell waited for her at the front, and when he saw her, the eyes of the man who had been the coldest and proudest in the city filled with tears. 2 years ago, he said, when it came time for the vows, I told a woman that she wasn't even fit to clean my shoes. There were soft laughs and a few tears. That woman saved my life 3 times. She gave me back my heart when it stopped, and she gave me back my heart when it was dead inside, filled with arrogance and loneliness. He took her hands. Aurora, you taught me that a person's greatness is not measured by what they have, but by what they give. I promise to love you, care for you, and honor you every day of my life, and I promise to take care of this heart, because now it belongs to you. Aurora, through tears, replied, I came to your world seeking justice and carrying hatred. I thought I would only find enemies, and instead, I found you. I found a family. She looked at Mrs. Elena, at George, at Ernest. I found a home. You gave me back my faith in people, Maxwell, and that's why today, with all my heart, healthy and whole, I choose you forever. They kissed, and the entire garden erupted in applause, cheers, and happy tears. Sometime later, on a quiet afternoon, Aurora and Maxwell walked hand in hand through the clinic garden in front of Renee's plaque. Aurora stopped, took her husband's hand, and gently placed it on her own belly, where a small curve was just beginning to show. Maxwell looked at her without understanding at first. Then his eyes widened, filled with amazement and a joy that trembled on his lips. It's, yes, Aurora smiled, her eyes sparkling. We're going to be parents. She caressed her sister's plaque. And if it's a girl, her name will be Renee. Maxwell hugged her with infinite tenderness, burying his face in her neck to hide the tears of a man who had had everything, lost everything, and in the end had found the only thing that truly mattered. The sun set golden over the garden. In the distance, Mrs. Elena loudly announced that dinner was ready, and George argued with a patient about who told the story of the poison and the defibrillator better. And in that corner of peace, built on the memory of a sister and the strength of a woman who refused to give up, Aurora Vance understood that life sometimes takes your heart to teach you the true value of making it beat again. Because some hearts stop, but the ones that truly matter always find their way back home.